Hello and welcome to the delicious recipe here on UPRN. If you're following along, you can watch us live on UFO Paranormal. UFO Paranormal, it's done twice, or on the other channel, it's UFO Gods and Extraterrestrials, and that's on YouTube. We are on Spreaker, Speaker, iHeart, iTunes, everywhere else that podcast is being played there as well. And you can also check out, if you want to check out on Facebook, The Delicious Recipe. It'll also be airing there later on as well. And on Joe Montaldo, the owner of the station, he has a Facebook page, UPRN. And if you want to become a member of UPRN, you can go and check it out there for extra bonus content off of the YouTube sites there, the UFO Gods and Extraterrestrials or the UFO Paranormal Radio twice. And so out of that part there, I'm going to introduce my guest here in just a second there. But today is, the show today I called Tiramisu, but this is actually Big Jim's story called the Trelawney story. And it deals with an interesting story in Northern Ontario. But tomorrow also is Canada Day up here in Canada, where we both are. I'm up here in Thunder Bay, and Jim is in somewhere here in Ontario. And just want to give you a little history for people because the delicious recipe, we throw everything in the pot and we see where it goes out in the end. But we're also an information thing. And you know what? So, Canada Day, 1867, July 1st, anniversary that commemorates the Constitution Act, which consolidated three territories into the single nation of Canada. And what three territories was that? British, the United Canadas, Nova Scotia, and New Brunswick, all together within the British Empire. So that's when Canada became a nation. And what we got there, Jim? What's the picture?
We'll see that later, anyways.
Okay,
Pretty Lever
so
Pan Gold.
this weekend there ends with Canada Day starts falls on Friday, so it's an extra long weekend. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday, there'll be lots of fun and mayhem, lots of horn honking, fireworks going off in the States. It's July 4th for them for their July 4th weekend, but Canada we went up on them. We started on the 1st. They're always in fourth place, so to say, as Don Cherry, I guess, would say. So I would also say part out of this there is that I remembered this joke just before we start, and it's from a guy that came from Kirkland Lake. His name was Alan Thick, and he told this joke. He says the two best things that come out of Kirkland Lake is hockey players and lesbians. And all of a sudden, this big, huge, burly bush guy jumps up and says, "Listen, my wife's from Kirkland Lake," and he goes, "Okay, what position did she play?" So, so anyways, out of that, I know I sort of butchered that joke.
You got it close, anyways.
Yeah, I got it close. Anyways, that's why I'm not a comedian.
I played hockey at Kirkland Lake, and the joke is we used to get on the elevator in Toronto, and Johnny Tomac and myself, and we pretend we didn't even know each other. I'd stand in one corner, he'd stand in the other, and I'd say, "Hey, buddy, hey, Shorty, over in the corner there." He was a short little Croatian guy. I said, "You look familiar to me." Yeah, Mekto, yeah. And he'd say, "Yeah, well, big guy, don't get too lippy with me." And I'd say, "Where are you from anyways, little man?" And he'd say, "I'm from Kirkland Lake." And I'd say, "Well, I thought the only thing from Kirkland Lake was hockey players and whores." And he said, hey, watch it. My sister was from Kirkland Lake." And I'd say, "Yeah, what team did she play for?"
Yeah, there you go. So a different version of the joke, same thing, same part that goes through there.
Yeah.
And like we were just saying just before there, it's always a part there, small town Indians. And so Jim's holding up a story. This is the Main Street Government Road, I believe you said there.
Government Road.
Kirkland Lake. Yeah. And I think we also mentioned there too is that, well, Kirkland Lake also had like 61 mines in there, lots of gold coming out of there. And I had said there's the part with the down the highway, many, many, many miles away from Kirkland Lake was Geraldton. And they had paved the roads with gold because the construction company took from the wrong pile. And so they that's the saying there. Let's see actually on the side. Geraldton, the roads paved with gold. But getting back to Kirkland Lake. Okay, Kirkland Lake. Let's start out the story there, Jim. Where would you like to start this out from?
Well, there was back in the 30s, there was an old prospector lived in Kirkland Lake. His name was John Lever. And Kirkland Lake, of course, was the nickname was the Mile of Gold because the mines ran right underneath the main street of Kirkland Lake. And every day at 5 o'clock, the mine would blast. And if you had anything on your walls and you forgot to take it off the walls, there was a good chance that the blast would knock it off the walls because the blast was going off right underneath your house, pretty
Right.
much.
The shake.
And
Yeah.
sometimes women would have, plaques or whatever dishes up on the wall. And boy, would they get mad if the blast blew the dish off the wall and it fell on the floor and broke. But that was life in a gold mining town.
Mhm.
So
Yeah. So that actually.
John
Okay.
Lever
Yeah.
had a
No.
son. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say that was also. I think they did that also in a movie and stuff like that, where they'd have the blasting going off, and people would be like, "Okay, well, this is no." That was in Mary Poppins when the guy would shoot off the general would shoot off the part for the alarm there with the clock, and then all the maids would go there and they grab the grandfather clock and hold everything and kick back the chair. I think that was sort of like maybe that was a sort of maybe somebody that was up there that did the Mary Poppins remembered that and pulled that into the movie. That's sort of a side note, anyways. But let's go back to John Lieber.
Yeah, John Lever had a son by the name Gordy Lever, and he was a mining promoter, prospector, pretty pretty much of a character. He he could spin a story like pretty well nobody else, and he was always spinning stories about mining properties. He was such an agitated man that he developed the name the Jackrabbit, and that was his nickname for life. They called him the Jackrabbit.
Right. And it wasn't a part there that he was a ladies' man that impregnated a whole bunch of people.
Well, he did have 6 kids, so I don't know.
Oh,
Maybe
okay.
Jackrabbit was a fitting name for the man, but he was a character. And anyways, when I lived in Kirkland Lake, I worked at the college, and I used to have a stope school in the Macassa mine down in the 5,400-foot level. A lot of people don't know how hot it is down at the mile deep. It's so hot that you don't even like. I'd have just a T-shirt on to go down to my mining school stope, and even that was uncomfortable on my body because I'd rather take the T-shirt off, but it just wasn't good etiquette to be walking around
Right.
with no T-shirt on in front of all these would-be miners. And
Right.
Andy Kuchar was the guy that used to take me through the mine, and he had a little thing going where he'd take me through all these narrow stopes. I'm about 215 right now, but I used to weigh about 250 at the college there. It's a little overweight actually, but he used to love to take me up these ladders and through these little narrow places where the miners were working, and I could barely squeeze through. And I'm
Okay.
scraping my body on the rock wall, and finally we'd get
So
up to.
explain to the viewers or to the listeners what is a stope? Because you have like a mine shaft, and then what is this like out fingers of
Yeah, you go
things?
down the mine shaft and you get off in a certain area, and you have drifts that go out. And then beside the drifts or off of the drifts, there's places. A stope is the place where they're mining the ore. And
Okay.
it's actually quite something to see because once the miners go in there and they start mining, they have to put wire mesh up and bolt it so that they don't get killed by loose rock falling down. And then they're
Okay.
mining in a certain direction, like east, west, or north, south direction. And they'll drill holes and then they'll blast, and that blast rock will fly out. And then that's what they muck out and send up to the mill to have the gold in it. So
Right.
that's what a
Okay.
stope
Yeah.
is. It's an area where the miners are working and mining.
Okay. So he took you up, and you're going through this place there in one of these stopes.
Yeah. And we'd get in there, and the miners were working, and they were rock bolting the metal screen above their heads so that when they were actually working on the face, which is the part of the wall where the geologist had sprayed the paint and said, mine this out for 3 meters going such and such a direction. And then they would get in there. And of course, with the drills and the steel, they would still be protected by the overhead mesh that they'd rock bolted
Right.
in the roof of the stope. And they would drill holes in there, and then they put the dynamite in there and set the blast off. And the rock, they'd leave the stope when the blast went off so that they weren't killed.
Yeah.
And then when they came back, well, all that mined area with the gold in it would all be laying there. Then they had to muck that out, what they call mucking. They would muck that ore out and send it up to the mill. And on the cage, there's one cage for the men going up and down, and there's another cage for the ore cars to go up and down. Then it would go to the mill. And one of the most exciting things at the mine, this was at the Macassa on the west end of Kirkland Lake, out out to Swastika, actually, which is another little town on the west end of Kirkland Lake, was when they poured gold bars. And they used to take me to this platform, and I would be able to look down, and the guy would have the furnace going, and he would be pouring the gold in these molds into bars. And what you couldn't see, you would see one man standing beside the guy pouring the gold with a shotgun, because sometimes the robbers would come into the room there and try and steal the gold bars. But there was another guy that was hidden way up. I could see him from my position on the platform, but he would be sitting there with a loaded shotgun. And if any robbers ever did come in and try and steal, do a heist like they just did out in British Columbia there at the bank, the robbers would come in and maybe point their shotgun at this guy and say, "We're taking the gold bars." Well, they wouldn't know that this guy was positioned way up high, looking down at them with the shotgun. So they'd be like sitting ducks.
Yeah,
I
that's
used to
like
get it.
that's like in the video games there for people that are listening out there. It's called Overlook. It's the sniper that's way at the back. You never ever see, but he's watching you with the scope and like, oh yeah, you think you're getting away with it. You never know that he's there. And they do
Right.
this in a lot of video games and stuff like that. He says, yeah, there are Overwatch. They call it, or Overlook or Overwatch. And
Yeah.
that's sort of really funny. That's like, well, you got to figure how much was gold worth at that time. That's got to be comparable to what it is today. I think gold today is worth about $2,326 or whatever an ounce.
Well, that would be
Is that what it
American.
is?
Right now, it's sitting around 1830 American. So in Canadian dollars, that would be about 2,100.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I just looked it up there today. There, what the market closed at 4 o'clock, and it was like, oh wow. It says, but it said it was down. And I was like, okay, well maybe the site I was looking at was probably if it's off by $300. Well, that's still, but still, anyways, an ounce of gold is a very small amount. It's heavy though. Like a brick of gold is
Well,
you can't even pick.
sometimes you see these guys that rob someplace, and they're loading all the gold bars into a truck, and they're just sort of throwing them around like uh, they hardly weigh anything. Well, believe me, if you're throwing around a couple 100-pound gold bar, you're going to have trouble lifting that thing and handing it over to the next guy. You'd just be shaking. Doesn't matter how strong you were. A couple 100 pounds of
Yeah,
gold.
I think it was that movie with Mark Wahlberg where they had those little Austin Minis and they just changed the suspensions on them and they filled up the whole three Austin Minis with all these gold bricks. This is different there, folks. Listen out there from a gold bar. This is a gold brick, and if you put like about 50 of those in the trunk of your car, I think your trunk would stay back where you just left.
That's right.
Like
Yeah. Well,
the weight is immense. Yeah.
yeah, the weight is immense, and I mean, you don't just throw them around. Throw them up into the. Come on,
Yeah.
reality sets in. But there was a lot of amazing things. The Kirkland Lake Larder area, they had 61 mines, and so far up to date, they produced 47 million ounces of gold there. So that's a pretty tremendous gold area.
Wow.
I always used to love the stories we'd tell. I played a senior hockey there for the Kirkland Lake Blue Devils. A lot of teachers from the high school and ex-pros were on those senior teams. And Kirkland Lake and Timmins were well known. Both camps, when you have a bunch of mines in one area, you call it a camp. So these were
Yeah.
gold camps, Kirkland Lake and Timmins, and both of those areas had a lot of visible gold that it was extraordinary. I mean, sometimes you could almost, it would come in waves, the molten gold, and then it had solidified. And miners used to manage to steal a certain amount of this gold out of the mine. They had all different tricks up their sleeve. First of all, they try and carry it out in their lunch buckets, and then they'd get caught. And then the next guy would, put it up the yin yang, and they brought in X-ray machines to catch guys like that. But they got so much gold out of the mine that they were called high graders, and they would melt it down into little buttons, and then they would sell it. And a lot of times they'd melt it into bars. And what they did with the money, that these high graders, they opened hotels, because then they were legit, and the miners all congregated in these little hotels and drank, and
Right.
they could sell them beer. And so then
Way to
the money
launder
was.
the gold,
So
right?
Kirkland Lake had about 45 little hotels in it, and the population was only about 14,000 people. And Timmins was the same way. Timmins had 50, I think it was 51 or 52 hotels, counting Schumacher and South End. And those hotels were 90% of them were all built with gold stolen out of the mines.
Wow. And that's the thing, is that was the part that you're saying, that we talked about this earlier, before the show started, is that when the blast was happening, people would go in there and they go and pilfer this gold mud, whatever, high grade, whatever, the blast residue, and just go and get out, because there was like regulations on, okay, how long you had to wait, but other people just go in there and go and just grab whatever they could grab, right?
Well, that one property, when I had Shiny Gold Resources, which was an exploration company, we had a property down at Shining Tree in Churchill Township, and we were fortunate. We had an iron formation that cut across a quartz vein, or I guess you could say the quartz vein cut across the iron formation, and that was the perfect place for the gold to settle out, right on the contact. And we had a mill going there for a year or so, and we were blasting and going down on an angle, mining this gold. And whenever we would blast, we would have to guard the roads. There was two roads, one from the north and one from off the highway coming in. So we would send somebody out there to guard, and then we would load the dynamite in all the holes and set the fuses off. This was the old days. Either that, or we'd be using electric caps, and we could be back and push the plunger. But we were getting so much visible gold that the guys were supposed to stay for 10 minutes. First of all, you yell, fire in the hole, and you yell that 3 times, so that if anybody's coming along the roads, they know that you're going to blast, or they better know. And then once you blast, you're supposed to wait 10 minutes before you go back to the blast area. Well, I'd get back there after my 10 minutes, and there'd be guys going through the muck pile and putting samples with visible gold in their pack sacks already. And, there was so much of it that I didn't really lay the law down and say, no, that belongs to the company. I'd let them have their samples, because, it'd make them happy.
You weren't as bad as those De Beers guys over there with the diamonds, and people are like stuffing them in their tooth or in the stuff or up their butt, and then all of a sudden as they're going through, they get caught with it, and then their hands get cut off, or they're they're done. That I guess in South Africa, or in the Africa blood diamonds or whatever, that was actually pretty. Well, there's actually a couple of movies that are about that, anyways. But
I was over in
so
Africa. I saw
yeah,
firsthand. You don't want to mess with De Beers. They've got some pretty big dogs, nasty attack dogs that patrol the beaches. Some guys would try and sneak in at night and get on the beach and get some of the diamonds that were in the beach sands there. But no, I'm not interested in scrapping with De Beers. They got their niche in the mineral world, and I got my little niche.
okay, so another point that you brought up, that we talked about this earlier, 1930, Alfred Cote.
Right.
Now, how does he
He
fit
was
into this story? Three Ducks
he was
Lake.
prospecting. I worked largely in the Shining Tree Belt, which is in between Timmins and Sudbury geographically, and Highway 560 sort of runs through the area. And there's a bunch of little mines in there. They've never really had a big producing mine, but there was tons and tons of many nice little visible gold showings, free gold. And it was always a place where you could get some claims. Like if you went to Timmins, or Kirkland Lake, the area was so tightly staked and held that you were lucky to get one or two little claims here or there. Well, go down to the city and try and sell the brokers on your idea that your company was going to have a chance to be a major producer. They just laugh at you. But Shining Tree was always an area where you could get, 80 claims, 120 claims. And it was always rolling over. People would come in. In fact, Shining Tree was famous for prospectors that would go down to the city with the nice visible gold sample from one of these little mines or showings and show it to the brokers and try and raise a bit of money. But none of these showings had very much to them. Ken Dark, the famous geologist that was involved in the discovery of Texas Gulf, used to tell me, what you're dealing with there is you're dealing with the roots of the system, and all the major gold and quartz and everything has been scraped away by the glaciers. That was his theory, or the way I understood him to say it. But anyways, like I say, there was a lot of little gold showings, a lot of little gold mines, but I don't recall. There's one decent mine there that probably has 1 million ounces in it right now that I think they're going to put into production. And then, of course, they found this IAMGOLD mine just to the west in another belt called the Swayze Belt. And that's where this Alfred Cote was prospecting in 1930. And on Three Duck Lake on the shore. What?
This is the hat you're wearing and the shirt you have there. Do you want to show everybody out there that that's
the
watching
shirt's up
there
behind me. The IAMGOLD shirt's up there, and the IAMGOLD hat. Where are we?
Turn it. Yeah, there you go. IAMGOLD, and this is a company.
I like
that
wearing
bought
the hat because I just staked 1,000 claims for gold down at Geraldton. I think that belt is going to boom here shortly, with Equinox putting the mine into production, and so I just thought this was a nice slogan for me. Is IAMGOLD, because I spent 60, 70 grand staking these claims, and I'm going to try and option them off to some companies. But yeah, this Alfred Cote found on the shore of Three Duck Lake, he found this amazing visible gold showing. I mean, there was gold all over in the rocks. And that factors into the rest of the story, because that became the Swayze Belt, which was just to the west of the Shining Tree Belt. And we call areas of greenstone rocks with intrusive rocks within them that we call those belts. So you got the Shining Tree Belt, and then just to the west over to the west on the west side of 144, Highway 144 between Sudbury and Timmins, you've got the Swayze Belt. And that's where Cote found this. And in fact, Cote Lake that was named after him was the scene of a excellent gold property for many years. People tried to mine it, and they drilled they drilled a lot of holes in it anyways, and nobody could quite make it into a mine.
Yeah, that wasn't that the same thing with Hemlo, right? That my property was like drilled like 100 and something times there, and they never hit anything. And all of a sudden, the one at the very end, it sort of hit the payload where they saw like, hey, this is sort of prosperous.
Yeah, I think it was hole 76 that Murray Pesam and Dave Bell drilled, and it became by today's standards, it wasn't a phenomenal hole. It was like 10 feet of 0.26 gold, 26 ounces per ton gold. But it got them on then their thinking changed, and they started hitting the ore body. Most of the gold at Hemlo doesn't start until you go down 500 meters. A lot of people don't know that. A lot of mines start right from surface, and the gold goes down, or the base metals, whatever your mining goes down. But the Hemlo mine, it wasn't until they were down around 500 meters vertically that they started hitting these gold intersections. And the rest is history. I mean, the mine's been producing for over 30 years.
Oh yeah, for sure. That's so. We'll go back to this part there. So we got here. I'm just writing down here. So Alfred Cote, White Golden Deer, Chester. Oh, Chester Township. Um, big. Oh geez, a big to get together with a new drilling prospect. Gordy, and then the Gordy Lever that dies in 2008. But the whole
Well,
part about there is.
this is
Sorry
what
if I.
happened. This is what happened.
Okay.
Gordy Lever went over there with his dad in the 1940s. In this picture here, this is Gordon Lever here, the fellow they called the Jackrabbit, and
Yeah.
he's got a gold pan down there in his right by my finger there. He's got a gold pan, and he's panning gold at the Cote Lake property, uh,
Okay.
which is the subject of our discussion today. And
Yeah.
this was back in the 1940s. So Gordy got the fever. He figured that that's where he was going to make his mark and make his $1 million was in the Swayze Belt. So I'm working at
He
Shining
almost looks.
Tree.
He almost looks like a. He almost looks like a movie star in that picture.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, he does. Well, he was sort of a movie star, and God bless him. He's a big reason why we're telling this story today. So
Yeah.
Gordy was working over there, and he had a company. He had Mergor and a couple other companies raising money, drilling holes, and he's going to have a big do there. So he gets a hold of me at Shining Tree, and he says, "Jim, why don't you and your crew all come over here? We're going to entertain you for the day. We are flying Murray Watson, a famous old prospector that worked up in the Arctic and found some amazing discoveries. He was living over by Temagami. We're going to fly Murray in. John Larch is coming down. Don McKinnon, all the guys from Timmins, they're all going to come down today, and we're going to christen the drill, and then when the drillers will start drilling on this new property." So me and all my guys go over there, and Gordy's got a bottle of champagne tied to a rope, and the dead stick is made out of metal. So you got your diamond drill, and your wire line is on a slant. In the old days we used to have three big legs went up like a tripod, but now they use wire line drills. So there's a thing called a mast, and that's where your wire line circulates in. So they slide the pipes down, and the core barrel goes down inside the drill pipes. So Gordy's got this bottle of champagne, and we're all standing back about 30 feet, and he swings it on the rope and hits the dead stick. Bang! Doesn't break. So now you got it. You can't christen the drill until the champagne bottle breaks. So he does it
Yeah.
about 4 or 5 times. It would never break. So he
Yeah.
gets pretty frustrated, and we're all standing around, sort of giggling and laughing at Gordy because he's getting madder and madder. Finally, he just took that bottle of champagne and stood right there and closed his eyes and smashed it on the dead stick. Well, that bottle of champagne had been so agitated with all these swings through the air and hitting the dead stick, but not exploding. The bottle just exploded, and there was glass and champagne all over everybody that was standing around in a circle around the drill. So it was sort of, he finally got his moment, and then the drillers started drilling, and we all went off to have a big meal at the camp and a few drinks. And Murray flew in a Cessna 180 from over at New Liskard area there, and we had
Yeah.
quite a party that night. And
No, no. What's funny about that is that there is the with christening a boat, and I mentioned this to you before. I'm not sure if it was the Queen Mary or it could have been the Titanic or whatever, but one of the princesses from the British family there, she had gone and swung the bottle over, and it's supposed to smash in the first break. And
yeah,
the lore and the mysticism is if it doesn't break, that boat is cursed to fail. And what does she do? The boil goes over, hits the boat, doesn't break, comes back, and it's like, oh, okay, try it again. Uh, no. And then the third time, yes, and it was like, and what ended up happening to that boat? Well, it met a sort of little bit of a tragic end. And so, would you think that out of this part of this story, we'll just sort of like give a little precursor that did anything out of this be a tragic end, or was it maybe that he had so much gumption that he overcome the curse of the bottle breaking?
yeah. Well, I mean, you're right. That was tradition back in those days. If the bottle didn't break, then you thought you were in for bad luck. That was
Yeah.
the way people thought about it, and I think that happened with the Titanic too. The bottle didn't break, and they kept trying and trying, but eventually it did break. But I guess it was too late. The Titanic was already cursed.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Okay, so we go on from here. So we already had, so you had the party. I'm just trying to go through this part here because I'm trying to keep on going there. And then we had the part about where the company gets sold off before his death, right?
Yeah, in 2006, Gordy had a company called Osprey, and they were drilling a bunch of BQ size core. You know, the core comes in AQ and BQ and HQ, and it goes up the alphabet. You know, when you get to NQ, that's pretty well the highest, the biggest core diameter that they drill. I mean, you can get bigger core. I've seen when we drilled the pilot hole at Pine Bay for the mine there, we were drilling a great big core about this size. I've got, but they put that pilot hole down to check and make sure that there's no ore underneath where you're going to sink the shaft. You want to be away from the ore body, so then you sink the shaft and you drift out to the ore body. That makes a better mining method. So
Hmm.
Gordy had this company called Osprey, and they drilled a bunch of holes, and he was getting some good values. But for whatever reason, uh, you know, Gordy was always he was not a sleight of hand guy, but he was always cooking up deals and things were happening. He decided he's going to sell the property, which was called the Jerome Mine, to a company called Cold Rock. I don't know if he had anything to do with Cold Rock or not, but Cold Rock bought the Jerome Mine, and then a company by the name of Ogden, and that's a geological term that we use for minerals that coagulate in the shape of an eye. It's a German word
Yep.
for Augen is Augen. It's a German word for the word eyes. And what happens when you have a highly metamorphosed rocks? Uh, there's a coagulate of the minerals, and it's shaped like an eye. And of course, they get stretched out a bit through metamorphism. So that was a pretty cool name for a company, Ogden, and they
Yep.
bought. Apparently, they bought the Jerome mine from when Osprey sold it to Cold Rock, and then Ogden bought it, and then Trelawney
Right.
moves in, and they're next door to Ogden. So Ogden is drilling on their property, the Jerome mine. Trelawney's drilling
Yep.
next to them, and they're having some good luck. And Trelawney starts, uh, you know, uh, getting all the properties together that is along about a 45-kilometer strike length. He's
Right.
what's the word? He's not compiling them, but he's
He's
there.
he's
He's making deals with all these companies. There was 10
right.
companies that
He's
they made
he's
deals with. So Ogden is
he's
drilling.
consolidated everything into himself. Yeah.
Ogden's drilling, and then Trelawney starts drilling, and they're both getting good results. So Trelawney looks at Ogden. They're just a small company, and they said, "I tell you
Yeah.
what, we'll give you $49 million to buy your property." Okay,
Yeah.
and makes the deal with them. So now Trelawney's out there raising money and drilling more holes. And along comes a company, this hat here, I Am Gold. And they see what Trelawney's doing. And Trelawney is up to about 1 million ounces of gold uh, proven. And they've got about 5 or 6 million ounces of gold, what they call inferred. When gold is inferred, FEINFERRED. What that means
Right.
is they think that it's there, but they have to drill more, closer 25-meter apart holes to prove that the gold is. That's what happened up at Red Lake with one of the properties there. Is they didn't drill enough closely spaced holes. Thought they had the ore body, but once they got in there mining it, it wasn't as continuous as they thought because they hadn't drilled these close holes. So now
Right.
Trelawney's
So
drilling a whack of holes, and
so a
they're
lot of
getting
this stuff is done
that.
on. Okay. Sorry there, Jim. It says so just so people listen out there, is that when this is not a mine shaft that's going down there. This is all speculation mining with doing assays and what you're getting through your core samples, seeing what your percentage could be for the diameter of the core that you're doing. That's why
Yep.
you said that the whole different things, and so that they know as so you're drilling more holes straight down in concession around a spot. You go, okay, well, down at this level, we're hitting this percentage of gold, and then we do a ratio to rock and that, and to find out how much gold per tonnage that we're going to be pulling out of here. Correct?
Yeah. Well, I mean, when
Okay.
you're drilling, you may drill on a 45-degree angle, or you may sometimes we do drill vertically. It depends
Yeah.
on what kind of a structure you're drilling. I mean, you can
Well,
drill at 50 degrees, 60 degrees.
you're looking for lenses in the ground that's under the ground that you can't go and
Yeah,
see that's
that's right.
on the ground. Yeah.
So I am gold
And
is I am gold is doing a pretty comprehensive program. And I think if I remember reading, if I remember correctly, they had actually, there was an underground operation there where they had actually gone down and brought out ore what to do what they call a bulk sample to see how the grade was going to run. And they do metallurgical testing at Lakefield Labs down in southern Ontario. And they'll come back and they'll tell you what your head grades are, all the different all the different parameters of your ore, if you're going to be able
yeah,
to separate the ore from the sulfides. So Trelawney's chugging along there, drilling a lot of holes, and I Am Gold shows up. Now, I Am Gold is a company that has 6 producing mines around the world. They know they're
yeah,
mining, and Trelawney is not a mining company per se; they're an exploration company. So
correct.
Trelawney or I Am Gold takes a good hard look at Trelawney, and they come up with an offer. They offer them $608 million for all this property that Trelawney has put together, which includes Ogden. And
Yeah,
so I met Gordy died in 2008, and I'm at the mining show that out in Winnipeg. There, they call it the Manitoba Symposium. And
yeah,
I've got a company called Giminex at the time. We had properties at Hemlow and up at Pickle Lake. That's where we hit some nice visible gold in our drilling there. And
yeah.
another property up in Snow Lake, Manitoba, near the Anderson, no, the Osborne mine. Actually, we were close to the Osborne mine.
Yeah.
So I'm working on these three properties, and in the meantime, Trelawney comes along and they're offering. I Am Gold comes along and they're offering Trelawney a deal. So Gordy dies in 2008. I'm at the show. He died in August, and then the show
Yeah,
was in November in Winnipeg, the Manitoba Symposium. And Dr.
yeah,
Eric Hoffman came up to me. He was the head of Activation Labs, a phenomenal chemist, a phenomenal scientist, and a phenomenal entrepreneur. He established activation labs all over the world. I met his
and
daughter
then
recently. His daughter and his son
they
are
do
running the business. Go
and
ahead,
they
Del.
do assays on the core samples that are being done, and they give you a percentage of what could be possibly
Yeah,
in that area. Is that correct?
yeah. When you drill the
Right.
hole, you split the core in half. You have to do that, and you send half the core in bags, and it's all marked out according to the footage where that section comes from, and you usually
Yeah.
will do your assays in 3 or 4 foot sections, depending on what mineral you're looking for, and you send this to a variety of different labs. But ACT Labs is one of the main labs, and that
I did
they'll come
did many
back and they'll
I did
tell you how
many of
much.
that. I did many of that in Flin Flon there in the core shack. They're splitting with the diamond saw or splitting with the diamond hand or with the hammer, cutting the core all in half. It's just like, yeah, doing that there, and then bagging it all up to go and marking out the tags, what footage it was at, and what hole drilled it was at. And this is for people that are out there listening. There, this is all on the part of speculation mining to find out where if there is an ore body there, and just to sort of reiterate there, so
Yeah,
people
sorry,
can follow along.
I've got a lot of core out in the backyard here at my house, but I forget I didn't bring a piece in. But I could show the people what a piece of core looks like, but and I see you got a picture of my book and my grandfather's mine there, the Narakmi Gold
Yep.
Mine at Snow Lake. So I see you got a
Yep.
picture of that. And there's a fella he used to be my son's grade school principal, Michael Barnes, and he's written a whole series of books that are available. Fortunes Found, and he wrote about Red Lake. He wrote about Kirk. He's written dozens of, probably a dozen books about Kirkland Lake and the surrounding area there. So now we've reached a point where I'm at the convention. Dr. Hoffman comes up to me and he says, Jim, he said, I think you're a kind of guy that likes to roll the dice. We call that a shooter. And he said,
Yep.
are you interested in buying some assays? I said, what? I mean, this is pretty unusual for somebody to be offering you assays. And I said,
Yep.
well, okay, I'm interested, but whose assays are they? He says, well, I can't say the name of the person. Okay, well, then can you tell me where this is? He said, yeah, these assays come from Chester Township down in the Swayze Belt. Well, I know it pretty good. I've driven by it 80, 100 times on my way over to
Yep.
the Shining Tree Belt. So I said to him, well,
Yep.
I'm interested, but how much do you want? And he said, well, we can talk about the price. I said, okay, I'll tell you what. I'm going to jump in my truck. I'll go back to Thunder Bay. I'm going to load up my truck. I'm going to drive to South Porcupine, check the files. I'm going to go and spend the night at my Camp 560 at Shining Tree. And then I'm going to go over to Chester Township and have a look around and see what the pattern of the drilling is. Sometimes you can tell by the way they pattern their holes if they're blocking out ore or if they're just exploration holes. So I drive over to Chester Township on the Sultan Road, drive into the Jerome mine, and I'm looking around. I'm checking the whole geographic situation. I can see where the drill was set up. The sludge is laying there in the ground. Then I have to go to the bathroom. So there's an outdoor outhouse there. And I run over to at the Jerome mine, and I run over to the outdoor outhouse, and I pull the door open. My God, what a shock. There's a naked woman inside. Help me out. Wow, somebody had drawn a picture of a naked woman in the back of the outhouse. Inside.
Somebody was waiting for somebody to bring him some toilet paper, and they weren't around for a while. So he was a great artist and sat there for a long time and drew an explicit picture of a lady in all her glory.
I'll tell you,
the best way
I opened the door and I saw that drawing in the back of the wall of the outhouse. I was slightly shocked. But anyways,
well, that's bush people. When people don't understand when you're working out in the camps and doing bush stuff like that. There was actually a lot of rules that women weren't allowed out around areas. It was just guys only in camps because
well,
there was
now.
two.
There's a lot of women working in the industry and the geologists and of course you got to have separate quarters for the women and unless they
but the thing was. Right, but there was a thing that was in camps beforehand, and I remember this when we did our job up in Knife Lake, and the stories was there said, you never have a woman cook. Well, Audrey was a great cook, but then she was your wife there, and that was a totally different situation. But in these bush camps that you're way secluded, and these guys are there in the bush for like 2-3 months. And they don't hear a woman's voice, they don't hear anything, and they're like, they get ideas, or they start conversations, and then there's jealousy that happens. So if you eliminate the woman out of the problem, then it's just the guys they're doing whatever and just working and dreaming about.
When we drilled the deep holes, the 4,000-foot holes down at Choiceland for the iron deposit, I was about 16. And I used to go in the cook shack at night and we had a woman cook there and play crib with the woman cook. I mean, I probably looked like maybe 18 or whatever. I probably had a bit of a beard. And what I got a kick out of is every 15 minutes or so, the foreman used to come along and look in the window of the core shack or the cook shack and just checked to see what was if we were still playing cards or not. But I mean, there was no hanky panky going on. But the foreman, he was
Yeah,
making sure that there wasn't anything developed. So
yeah.
now
Well, that's
we're
okay.
at the
Yeah,
point
go
where
ahead there. We got about 5 minutes. We gotta get going here, Jim, because I know I delayed you with the side stories. I'm so sorry about
no,
that.
that's fine. So now we're at the point where I Am Gold wants to take out Trelawney and get the whole package of land, get all these 10 properties that they put together. And in fact, one of the properties I think is called the Jackrabbit property. And then there was another
Oh wow.
property, there was some patented claims that John Lelever, Gordy's son, he sold into the deal as well. So I Am Gold offers Trelawney $608 million, and they accept it, and I Am Gold becomes the owner of all these claims and all these option packages that they still have to fulfill the obligations to the owners. So
Hmm.
what's amazing, and this is basically the punchline of the story, is number one. After I did all my homework and researched and phoned Dr. Hoffman and I said, okay, I'm ready. I did my homework. How much do you want for the assays? And he said, well, unfortunately, he said, you're too late. I just sold them yesterday to somebody else. But he wouldn't tell me who he sold them to. So to this very day, back in 2008, I don't know if he sold them to an individual who sold them to Ogden, or if he sold them directly to somebody in Ogden, or if he sold them to Trelawney. I don't know. But I was this close, but obviously no cigar because he'd sold the property. Now, Trelawney took out Ogden for 49 million. I Am Gold
You're
took
right.
out Trelawney for 608 million, and they went in
Yeah.
and did more work in Chester Township there on the what they call the Cote Lake discovery, and now they have a new one beside it in the same intrusion called the Gosselin zone. And
Okay.
guess they're up to a certain amount of gold ounces in the ground. Guess how many ounces, and guess what it's worth.
Well, you told me. I'll let you tell the listeners out there because I know it starts with a B.
All right. Well, they've proven up 10 million ounces now, and that is probably more than $10 billion worth of gold. So
Okay. Now,
life
well,
goes on.
I'm just gonna say, okay, this is all speculation. This is not mining property, and because I was looking this up, there is that if you find something there, where do you get to take responsibility away from the government to own that property to mine?
Well, the more money you spend, the more you can bring all your claims to lease. The more money
Yeah.
you have to spend so much money to get your leases. Once you get your leases, you approach the government to get mining permits, and that's their responsibility to give you the mining permits. And once you do that, then you can start mining. But it's so different today. You have to jump through all these hoops. You have to do environmental studies. You have to deal with the Métis bands, with the First Nations people, all the
Oh no.
indigenous people that are involved. I tell you, it's a lot of money and a lot of engineering has to go into the pre-production of a new mine these days, and it's actually quite an interesting process where you have to, if there's fish in any of the lakes, you have to either. Can you imagine relocating all the fish from a lake to another lake or whatever? Uh, it's it sounds humorous in a way, but you have to test these lakes. You have to have tailings ponds that are not going to damage
Yeah.
the environment. Uh,
Yeah.
you have to train people. It's a pretty expensive proposition to open a new mine these days.
Well, when I worked up at the oil sands up in northern Alberta, they had the tailings ponds there they were doing there for runoff, and they'd have flashbangs going off about every 2 minutes to keep wildlife away. And they hired people that dealt with falconry and stuff like that to go and scare away birds. So you're paying this guy $150,000 to go and scare away birds with his birds to keep them out of this pond that you guys created. It's a really sort of funny twist in how things go. But out of this, there, I got about 1 minute left here before we get cut off, and so Jim, just tell them about your books there, and I'm gonna have you on again there. Hopefully, you can do this like once a month because you have so many good stories. I want to go into these South African stories there too, and yep,
There's
the
a
book is
sample.
also.
There's a sample with some real nice visible gold in it. That's from the mine up at Snow Lake. There wasn't much
Mm-hmm,
visible gold in my grandfather's mine. You know, it's a
mm-hmm.
phenomenal story. He came back from World War One, badly wounded, got in a canoe in Saskatoon, paddled all the way up to Snow Lake, and he found this gold mine. So
Yeah,
we're certainly proud of him. He was a Métis. I mean, I guess everybody in the family is Métis because his mother was a native person, and
yep.
so we're so proud that he fought the elements, and it was a just barren
He,
wilderness in those days, but he came out of it with a gold mine. And I was this close with getting those assays. If I'd have got those assays, I might have got the cigar. But my
that
thousand
this
claims
is
at Geraldton, I guarantee you there's going to be a property, one of the properties out of the 14 that I staked down at Geraldton is going to have some production.
well that's good to hear because I have
Stay
great
tuned.
promise
Stay
and
tuned.
hope for you.
Stay
Yes,
tuned
stay
for
tuned.
Jim
Yes,
Paris's
same
success
bat
story.
time. Same bat time, same bat channel. So this has been the delicious recipe. And if you guys didn't realize that, if you didn't watch Batman back then, I am Gold. And you know what? Thank you all for listening. Check in with us. Check in with me. Anyways, next Thursday. I'm not sure what I'm having on next week. It might have be my wife. And there we go. There's another picture.
Gordy
And
Lelever panning gold at Cote Lake.
awesome. So stay tuned there for next. I think we got Red Pill News with Red Pill News guy. And you know what? Check in next Thursday, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, 6 Central. And we'll see you all next week.
On the delicious recipe.